Hey, long time no see.
Hi, how are you?
Shepherds,
How are you?
shepherds have
Oh,
their
the
You watching the last
demonstration.
3 or 4 classes?
Right.
Are you watching the last 3 or 4 classes, or are we
Not the
going
last
Dobermans
few,
had
but
something with
I've
their
sporadically
eyes.
been watching whenever
Okay.
I get a chance.
So,
Okay.
The various
I'm behind.
breeds have consistent problems.
and we have that sumo, that Shema slide we can.
We do have the Shema slide.
Good. We like that slide.
So we're having trouble with Tavuna,
Oh, okay. What's
how that fits in.
question is, we're having trouble with Tavuna, how it fits in.
Yeah, how, all of a sudden they drop that in, you know, not with all the other emotions, but all of a sudden this one shows up.
Yeah.
Where does it come from?
You find it in the Siddur. Sorry, I can't quote exactly where it comes, but I remember from the morning service that Tavuna is a word that's used in the Siddur quite a bit. It's not like a new invention kind of thing. And it's a part of Bina, which you see from the root. Tavuna, it's
Oh, Bina.
Bet Nun He.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same root as Bina. So it's a Hebrew word that's translated as sort of understanding. But it's a particular kind of understanding. And to get why and where it comes from, you have to remember that in Hebrew, states of consciousness are just really, really stratified and clear and embedded into language, right? So for us, like, well, is it understanding or is it something else? It's applied. We don't have a word for it, and it's vague. It's like I'm trying to learn how to speak Chinese, and I don't get what their R sounds like because I just don't have the sound for it. And I got to really change almost how my brain hears to be able to start to say it, right? Same thing here. In Hebrew, the states of consciousness are very, very strictly defined, and there are many, many more words to define each aspect of states of consciousness. So for us, he throws this word out of nowhere, and we're like, what does that really mean? In Hebrew, right, tfuna. That's not bina, that's tfuna, it's something else. And in Hebrew mysticism, people are much more familiar with that word. So he's focusing on it, but it's not so novel like it is for us that there's this idea of an intellect that has some emotional capacity, or an intellect that has it's more of an applied kind of feeling of intellect, or it's like...
So it's a state of consciousness?
Well, intellect, emotions, those are all states of consciousness. Yeah, so I use that word generally. So, for instance, love, there's not just a bunch of words for love that are all kind of poetically linked and overlapped. There's types of love that we're going to learn about, lower and higher gradations of each of those types of loves, and each of them is very specific and doesn't overlap with the other, like the way we look at it in English. So in everything, whether it's intellect, emotions, even expression in some ways, every state of consciousness in Hebrew Kabbalah is very, very clearly defined and describable as different from another state of emotion or intellect. Right? So how it fits in is, on the one hand, I'm meditating to generate emotions, right? That's the long, short way. I'm learning how to engineer emotions, which is different from Eastern meditation, as we keep stressing, where often the point seems to be to elevate consciousness to a much more spiritual state until we're out of the illusion and we're living just in spiritual oneness all the time, or as much of the time as possible. That's fine, but you could do that, but that might be your animal soul doing that, right? Why are you doing that? Who wants to do that? What's the reason? What's the result? Have I changed how I act, speak, and think? These are the Jewish questions. So we don't meditate to elevate consciousness. We meditate to generate emotions. And the tool to make sure those emotions are actually connected to my intellectual meditation is tfuna. Because it's also possible for me to meditate on something, and I'm not going that deep into it, but I like the idea that I should be experiencing emotions, so I work myself up, dancing and singing and a sense of general spirituality, until I feel emotional, and now I feel like my meditation has been successful. I've contemplated deeply a divine subject, and I've created emotions, but I just create emotions because that's what I wanted. And I might be that kind of person that can generate emotions. Tavuna is also the link between the intellect and the emotions. So when I focus on the tuna aspect, that also makes sure that the emotions I'm experiencing are genuinely connected to the intellect and can genuinely then elevate the mitzvahs and the Torah that I'm doing, as we described, to the sefirot. And secondly, tuna is, for those of us, as we said, there's certain souls, if you remember the note, there's certain souls that are more in the state of almost ibur, pregnancy, where the emotions are still sort of as they are within the intellect cosmically, and their soul comes from that aspect of the cosmos. And for those types, it's not as simple to generate emotions the way we're describing. So even if I just have the tuna emotions, the Alter Rebbe is saying, and we'll see the specific dynamic why it's so powerful, but the tuna emotions can also function to elevate Torah mitzvahs. So it's twofold. The first is it makes sure that my intellect and emotions are actually connected. The emotions are intellectually driven and generated, not just kind of self-inflated. And two, it can function on its own to actually do what we're trying to do, which is be a productive soul, to elevate Torah and mitzvahs and to elevate my own animal soul. And also it helps create congruence, right? The other reason why we're meditating is because we've learned how one can be a Beinoni, which is just my expressions of my soul behavior can be at 100%, even if on the inside I'm still basically just a regular Rasha, right? So on the inside, my soul and my nefesh b'mit are very active and giving me all kinds of self-centered ideas. But I say, no, thought, speech, and action, it's going to be 100%. And now I've pushed my external behaviors to a very high level, but my internal reality, emotionally, intellectually, is still, call it perhaps immature. So when I use the long, short way, it allows me to create another aspect, which is congruence between the two, right? So I may be able to recognize and be able to achieve behavioral advancement or perfection, right? Being other-centered, being divine-centered, doing the appropriate thing at every situation, even in thought. But now I want to get congruent so that my inside, so the intellect of my soul, the midot, the emotions of my soul can actually start to meet my outside behaviors. And that's where the long, short way comes in. And there, I remember Rick, if you're watching a video, hi Rick, Rick said, I've been meditating now for a few weeks and I don't notice any emotions happening, right? I don't notice any difference. My advice is to think of it a little like canoe paddling. A lot of people here, canoe or kayak, people have done that? Mm-hmm. Yeah? So, I go out on the canoe and I sit in the boat and I push backwards in the water with my paddle. And after a certain amount of time, I'm all zoned out and I'm relaxed. And after a certain amount of time, I arrive somewhere very far away, right? Now, I haven't actually pushed the canoe anywhere, right? I just pushed the water. And if I were training a child to row the canoe, it might make no sense. They get in the boat and they want to move the boat, so they push on the boat, right? Doesn't move. They rock the boat. It doesn't move. They try everything they can. When you're in the boat, you can't push the boat forward. And you try to explain to them, no, you don't. It's the boat. You can't move. You take this paddle and you push on something else. You push on the water. Okay, I want to go that way. No, push backwards, the other way on the water. Okay. I'm pushing the water backwards? How is pushing the water backwards going to get the boat to move that way, right? They don't understand. And maybe they don't have the coordination at first, and they're just going around a circle, and it doesn't work, right? But in this mashal, the water is the intellect, and the boat is the emotions in this metaphor, right? And we can't directly push our emotions to change, right? We have this nefesh b'mit, and it's doing its thing, and unless you're a tzaddik, they don't have direct control over that. But as we learned, we can think about whatever we want. We have complete control of our mind. You can direct your mind to the very opposite of what it's thinking about or what it wants at any moment, all the time. And that's the paddle in the water, right? And it may be that I sit and I do one paddle and the boat doesn't seem to have moved very far. Or it just went in a circle and I wound back in the same place. That's okay. Just learn to paddle. Every time I push back on that water, trust, I understand the dynamics of the canoe and momentum and fluid dynamics. There is a way, and if you just learn to row properly every day, one at a time, consistently, eventually you can get a boat to move from here to here and wind up in a very different spot. And if you can move a boat in one small lake, you can move a boat in a big lake, you can move a boat in a river, you can move a boat on a journey across a whole country, you can wind up in a very different spot. but it happens just one oar stroke at a time. That's our meditation. So we know we're applying the energy intellectually by focusing on our meditative technique. And over time, that consistently moves our emotions, but that's a gradual process. But you can change yourself tremendously, just take consistency. Did I answer your question and several others?
That was a good review.
Tuna, that's tuna. Right?
Yeah, it helps.
So we are at, I know where we're at. Just the wings. So that's the review. That's where we're at. Yes. Yes, of course. There you go. Is there anybody else? We good? We just did the wings, right?
236.
Already there.
Keilu asaf behem.
So 236 in the middle. Chilu asak behem bitchilu rechimu mamash asher behit galut libo. The love, go ahead.
The love and fear referred to as tavuna, although not heartfelt emotions, nevertheless serve as wings for one's Torah and mitzvot in the same way as if he practiced them with real fear and love as revealed in the heart.
Right, so this tfuna emotion, you might think of it as it's not just an intellectual understanding, but think of it as more of an appreciation, right? Like, yeah, it's not just that I understand the dynamics of the souls and of focusing on someone else and me, and it's an intellectual pursuit, but now I appreciate it. Like if I would learn about Baroque music enough, I'd start to have an appreciation for Baroque music, right? It's not, maybe I don't have strong feelings yet, but the difference between just intellect and an appreciation for something. So that appreciation in the Bina, in the conscious and analytical understanding of the mind, that can actually function as wings for Torah mitzvahs, to elevate them, as we saw, to the sefirot within one of these four worlds. Don't have to put the slide up. Right? And if you want to go deeper into the four worlds, we reviewed it kind of ad hoc last time, but in our on Temple Israel's website, on the Introduction to Kabbalah, we go more clearly in detail in the four worlds. So if you want the information, look that up. But you can elevate any mitzvah or any Torah that you're doing. This Torah we're studying right now, if we meditated in the morning in a certain way, and we focus on the love and awe we have for the concept that now we're encountering chokhmah of the Ein Sof as we're learning this, then this Torah study can actually elevate perhaps to the 10 sefirot within a siyah, and as we'll learn later, there's a whole complex system where everything gets united with the Ein Sof once it hits the sefirot in any world. So the Tvunan emotions can function to do that, can give Torah mitzvahs wings to quote-unquote soar on high and to elevate our share of the world. That's being a productive soul. Ba'chafitza v'chashika u'tshuka morgeshet b'libo v'nafsho hatzmei Hashem mipnei rishpei esh avoto sheb'libo kaniskar la'el.
In which case he would have performed them with desire, fervor, and passion, that they are felt in the heart and the soul thirsting for God, due to the flaming love of God in his heart, as explained above. That a revealed love of God elevates one's Torah and mitzvah by lending warmth and vitality to one's actions.
However, I just stop there. All right, so were I to be doing the mitzvahs with a love for Torah mitzvahs that is just a flame and an awe and respect that is just also very, very active, right? You know when you're in that state because you're so excited. You know when you're doing something you love so much that you just forget yourself and you lose track of time and you're in that whole wonderful state, right? That tells us something, right? Because what characterizes each of these four worlds as we go up is less and less self-identity for everything. That's what we looked at before. The physical world, this is a book, this is a book, this is a person, right? Sorry. Boom. Sorry about that. That is a mic, right? So each of them is different in the physical world, it's clear. In the world of Yitzira, the world of formation, now they just have different forms, but they don't have physical space anymore. So you can't point to one or the other. They have less self. In the world of Bria, they don't even have forms, so everything is just a possible item of existence and identity, but it's hard to say what's what. And finally, in Atzilus, there's only godliness. There isn't anything created yet, so there's only this oneness. So as you go higher, each world is less and less about a sense of self and more about a sense of bitul, self-nullification. And that's the same thing when you're doing something with great emotion, even something that's just mundane, playing a game. When you love it, you kind of lose track of yourself in time. There's just the game, right? So it's the same thing here. We're doing this with Torah and mitzvahs, and when you're doing it with full-fledged ahava and yira, love and awe, now you know that Torah and mitzvah is being elevated somehow, and one of the signs is that you kind of forget you're there a little bit. You lose track of yourself. But this isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about my tvuna emotions, which are more subtle, more intellectual, more of an appreciation, more that I feel like I should have a feeling. These are ways we've described tvuna. הואיל לתבונה זו שבמוחו ותלמות ליבו שהיא המביאתו לעסוק בהם.
For it is this kavuna in his mind and in the recesses of his heart that leads him to engage in the Torah and mitzvah, as explained above.
Right, so it's not so obvious that the intellect has created fiery emotions, but the appreciation that I have in my mind, the tvuna emotions, that's actually still what's motivating the behavior. Right? So even though I'm not having the emotional experience, that tvuna, well, I'm doing something, and why am I doing it? That tvuna is driving it, right? The tvuna is the one that's flying the drone, right? It may not be a very strong signal between the remote control and the drone, and so it's not so easy to pick up on that they're connected, but still, it's enough to reach it, and the tvuna is the one that's making that action or that thought or that speech happen. It's flying the drone, even with a weak signal. So it's still connected. It has at its core the intellectual trigger and the intellectual source that is now driving that mitzvah, and that's why it belongs in a higher world and can be elevated back to that world. And in some ways, this whole experiencing emotions can become, we might think, well, if it's just tvuna, it's sort of a cop-out, right? I mean, nice the Alter Rebbe is giving us, like, even if you don't experience the emotions, well, it's still fine. You can imagine that the emotion's driving it. It's not that at all. It can even be that the desire to experience emotions can become a little bit of a nefesh b'amit thing in and of itself, right? Well, I'm meditating and now I'm getting up in the morning, I'm doing all these good things, but I'm not feeling great love for it. I'm doing it because I appreciate it. How can that really be, my best, right? And then one day I do something and now I feel incredible emotions and I'm so happy with myself and I finally achieved it. Now I'm feeling love and awe. Isn't that amazing? Look what a great spiritual person I am. Well, who's happy about that, right? So just be aware, the sense that tvuna is not enough may be coming from nefesh b'amit as well. Like, great, if you just love cooking challah for Shabbat and being with your family and saying blessings and that just fills you with joy, beautiful, right? Just go with it. But if I don't, I shouldn't beat myself up and think, well, my meditation isn't working. Tvuna actually can drive thought, speech, and action and elevate it the same as the full-flown emotions.
ולולא שהיה מתבונן בתבונה זו, לא היה עוסק בהם כלל, אלא בצרכי גופו לבד.
Had he not meditated on his tshuva, he would have occupied himself with all but with his physical needs alone.
Right, so had I not focused on it, I probably would have just had breakfast, done what I do, gone for a jog, had a nap, taking care of myself, not out of a sense that I can improve the world. I would have been a different person. My thought, speech, and action would have been different. Right? So with the tvuna, I have one set of thought, speech, and action, and without the tvuna, I have another. So just logically, that means the tvuna is actually driving a new set of thought, speech, and action. It's embedded in it, and it can elevate it.
even if it's not the kind of emotions that we would like as spiritual seekers. וגם אם הוא מתמיד בלימודו בטיבו, אף על פי כן אוהב את גופו יותר בטיבו.
Even if he is a conspicuous student by nature, nevertheless, he naturally loves his body more.
What is it then?
What is it then that diverts one from his natural inclination to engage in his bodily wants and enables his diligence to overcome his physical self-love? It is the love of God, in this case, the hidden Tavuna, love. For this reason, the Tavuna provides his Torah and mitzvah with wings, enabling them to rise heavenward as though motivated by a revealed and conscious love of God.
Right, so remember we had that Beinoni who loves to learn and it just doesn't get excited by physical stuff. So you get the feeling the Alter Rebbe put in parentheses for somebody that remembered that chapter and said, well, what about that person, right? Do they they would have learned anyways. It's what they like. So I think that's just covering that point. That even in the case of that kind of Beinoni, well, everybody, it's easier to sleep than to stay up and learn, right? So at some point, it's your Tefuna emotions that are driving it, even if you're that kind of Beinoni, which is an unusual person. And now we get to the particular dynamic and sort of a proof text of how it is that the Tefuna emotions can elevate thought, speech, and action. And it comes from the Talmud. V'zeh ramzu Rabbeinu zichronum livracha.
Our sages of blessed memory hinted at this principle stated here, that the Tavuna love, too, has the power of elevating one's Torah and mitzvot.
And so the word used is ramzu, from remez, from a hint. It's one of the levels of Torah. And as we've seen many times, this is the Alter Rebbe's, one of his techniques, and many Hasidic masters and kabbalistic masters. They take something that is a legal statement, and then they find the sort of hidden mystical dynamic within it. In this case, why it is that the Tefuna emotions actually can serve to elevate Torah and mitzvahs just like a full-blown love. V'amra machashava tova hakadosh baruch hu mitzarfa l'maseh.
When they said the Holy One, blessed be He, joins a good thought to the deed.
Right, so it's God, it's the Ein Sof itself that actually joins a good thought to a deed. And mitzarfa l'maseh, I think that's Aramaic, right? But from Kiddushin, that it's God that joins a good thought to a deed. Now this is a statement that's actually just halachic. It's just Jewish law. And it means that if say somebody needed $10 to buy a meal for someone. They ran in, does anybody have $10? I have to buy a meal for someone who's hungry. And I'm like, I have $10, and I run to my coat to get my wallet and take out the $10, and I come back, and lo and behold, someone else has already given the $10, and the person left to buy the meal, and it's done. And I'm not needed. And I'm standing there with my $10, and I put it back in my coat. So I didn't do a mitzvah, right? No, it's just a completely neutral moment. Had I gotten that $10 to the hand, now I'd have, the mitzvah, I would have elevated the money, I would have helped the person, all good things. But as it is, I missed my chance and nothing happened. So now the Talmud comes in and says, no. If you really intended to do it, then God joins your good thought with a deed. So, if you're into brownie points in heaven, you get a little ding up in heaven, and there you go. And when your soul back in heaven, you look back at your whole life, and you see all the light you created, and that it registers, and you see a little bit of light coming from that deed, even though the deed never happened, because God joins the thought with the deed. If you intended to do it, then you're still productive spiritually. You still created light that your soul will appreciate and bask in the afterworld.
And it's encouraging.
It's encouraging. It's great, right? So you should try and do things, right? And even don't be depressed if you didn't manage for logistical reasons. It was worthwhile, right? You should always put the effort in. Great.
But you get credit for good intentions.
Yes, exactly. So in the world of spiritual credit, that registers, right? Which is, it's a little suspect here in the Tanya that I would do things because I want to get spiritual credit. I want the mitzvah, right? Then now, whoa, we're always careful with that. But still, in the Talmud, that's obviously reality, and word and punishment and doing mitzvahs, that's a reality. And so that's what the Talmud's saying. The intention, if it's there genuinely, then that's joined to the deed. Here comes the Alter Rebbe and he says, well, hold on, that's a weird way of saying it, right? The Holy One, blessed be, joins a good thought to a deed. I mean, there's simple ways of saying that, right? So he'll go on. Does it say that here? I thought he did. Right, maybe he does. I'm missing it. Right, join. Why not just say, that the deed counts? Like, there's easier way of saying it. The point of saying joins good thought to a deed, the Alter Rebbe is saying, is that's actually the tfuna emotion joining to the action.
How about the fellow who prevented you from doing this good deed? Does he get a negative credit?
That's a good question, yeah? So, but talking of negative, it's a good thing it doesn't work in reverse, right? It's nice that God will join an intention to a mitzvah with a mitzvah, but how many times do you have an intention to do something negative? Thank God, God doesn't say, well, I'm going to join that to an aveira. I'm going to join that to a negative. You thought of saying something, but you didn't say it. Well, God's going to count it anyways, right? So that's the main thing we're appreciative of. I'm not sure I don't think that if you jump to do a mitzvah and you keep someone else from doing it, that's just divine providence, right?
That's homework for you, Kathy.
Yes, I'll look. So the Alter Rebbe is taking this and saying, no, when the Ein Sof joins a good thought to a deed, that's the tfuna thought, right? That's the thought that's actually trying to move towards applying it. That's the thought that's thinking about, how can I put this intellectual piece to practice? And if you have that good thought, even if you don't have the full-fledged emotions that will elevate that mitzvah, it's actually the Ein Sof that will say, good, you did your part. You're not necessarily the quality of soul that's going to have full-blown emotions. I'm going to take that emotion of intellect and I'm going to join it with your thought, speech, and action so that it will elevate. Right? So the proof is coming from the Talmud, and he's finding a hinted meaning that the Talmud wasn't really talking about. The Talmud was talking about your intention to do the mitzvah that was thwarted in some way.
So if I'm gonna do a good deed, I gotta look around to make sure I'm not preventing anybody else from.
This has really touched a chord with you, hasn't it? You tell me, sir, you want to leave no mitzvah that anyone else has an opportunity to do first.
I just want to be clear on the rules of the road.
On a tangent, that actually it's interesting. When you're learning, like right now we're learning Torah, so if an opportunity to do a mitzvah arose, whatever happened, someone needed some kind of help, actually we would be obliged to check if somebody else can do it first before we get up and leave Torah study to do the mitzvah. So there are situations where that's actually the case, and that's advisable, because you're not supposed to stop learning Torah and interrupt it to do a mitzvah that somebody else can do, right? But if you're just in a neutral state, if you're just walking down the street and you see a mitzvah, you're supposed to run to do it, and whoever gets there first is just, their luck.
But it's good
Yeah.
to know you get some credit.
Yeah. V'hava le'lememar ma'ala alav hakatuv ki'ilu asa'a.
The simple meaning of the phrase, that when one intends to do a mitzvah, but is prevented from doing so, God ascribes it to him as though he had actually performed it, warrants the expression, Torah considers him as though he had actually done it.
Right, so right here. So the Alter Rebbe says, if that's what they meant, why wouldn't they say ki'ilu asa, as if they'd done it? Right? To join the thought with the deed. Why this bizarre oblique expression? There must be some meaning that the Torah didn't just say that God considers it done. Right? You wanted to do the good thing, you didn't have a chance, fine. If you wanted to, I'm considering as if you did it. What joining the thought with the deed, what is this language about? Right? So that's why he finds this hinted meaning that it's not just that you did it, it's that you're joining the tfuna intellectual emotion with the mitzvah. That's the dynamic we're relying on when we meditate and generate just tfuna emotions and then do something, knowing that it's the Ein Sof that will join them together to elevate them. And one teacher that I watched raised a point that I hadn't seen anywhere else, and he said, when you think about it, which is going to be elevated more powerfully? Torah and mitzvahs that I created the emotions and I elevated them and I put them all together and I sent them on their way, or Torah and mitzvahs that the Ein Sof itself took the tuna and put it into the mitzvah and sent it up on its way. And the Ein Sof took responsibility and care for it. Like, interestingly, I'm not sure that the full-fledged emotions that are just my responsibility are going to elevate more effectively and more completely than if the Ein Sof is involved. The Ein Sof says, you know what? Smolash really tried here, but he just did tuna emotions, so I'm going to take care of this, and I'm going to put them together and elevate them. It may be that there's an advantage to using tuna emotions because now the Ein Sof is involved quite directly in elevating them. Take it or leave it. That was an interesting point he made. Eile ha'inyan.
The explanation, however, lies in the previously mentioned principle.
כי דחילו ורחימו שבהתגלות ליבו, הם המתלבשים במעשה המצוות, להחיותם לפרחה לעילה.
Excuse me. It is the revealed fear and love of God in the heart that vest themselves to one's performance of the commandments, giving them vitality to soar on high.
Right, so by explaining, he's first describing what it feels like when the love and awe are revealed in the heart, right? So not just an intellectual appreciation, but, oh, wow, right? I can't believe you did that for me, right? Oh, I love that, right? A revealed, or awe, whoa, be careful of that, right? You're on the beach and you see the waves go out and you suddenly you remember that tsunami, right? And there's awe. Everybody get away from the water, right? So you know what that feels like, right? It's in your body. So when it's a revealed fear and love, here he's talking about the quality of the heart and why it is that the heart can affect the organs in a way that the mind can't. Right? Why it is that the heart is what elevates the emotions, thought, speech, and action in a way that the intellect can't. Ki halev hu gam ken chumri, ki sh'ar evarim shehem klei hamaseh. For the heart is also corporal, like the other organs of the body, which are instruments of action. So most of the mitzvahs we're doing with our hands, with our mouth, with our tongue, with our nose when we're smelling the fragrance at the end of Shabbat, it's all physical stuff, right? So what's the organ that's going to infuse energy and vitality in terms of love and awe with that? It's the heart. Because the heart, it's part of that physical world. It's a physical organ. It's right in the middle of the whole body. And so the heart has this quality where it is able to directly power and drive and lend emotional reality and energy to any action that we do. Right? It makes sense. When one feels a palpable love in one's heart, which indicates that the revelation in the soul has become materialized to the point where it can be experienced as a feeling of love in the physical heart, then this soul revelation, this love, can also be received by and expressed in the other corporate organs of the body. When it is so received, and when the organs act in accordance with the love in the heart, then this love lends vitality to these actions, for the heart is the source of vitality for all the organs, as the Alter Rebbe goes on to say. So it feels like we're splitting hairs over the obvious here, but think about it. Your heart is the organ that takes the intellectual antecedent, the intellectual energy, and gives emotional energy to that, warmth or fear, love or fear, and then the rest of your body's affected. When you're feeling an emotion, your whole body's affected. You do everything differently. So now that mitzvah, whatever it is, any physical thing that you do, is going to have that same warmth. That's the wings that will let it ascend.
The heart is, however, internal and the organ source of vitality.
Right? So my hands are out here doing stuff. The heart is inside, thank God, safe in there. Therefore,
because the heart in its corporal reality is close to the other organs and also provides their vitality, it can clothe itself in their actions to be their wings elevating them.
Right, so the brain is like up here, away from most of the physical organs. It's got intellectual activity, which doesn't really connect to the physical organs. It kind of stays in its world. It's happy staying in the world of Bria, as it were, staying at that level of my soul. It doesn't necessarily motivate me. Right? We all know the person that has a great intellectual understanding of something, but
not necessarily feeling, and they won't get up and do anything. They're just happy to just consider and ponder, right? But the heart, now that doesn't let me sit still, right? The heart is close to the other organs. It drives. It's physical. It lends them energy. So it's the heart that truly, in the fullest sense, can lend the wings of love and awe to any Torah mitzvahs. The brain, the intellect, that drives what I focus on, drives how I feel, but it doesn't directly create wings necessarily for love and awe in that way, for mitzvahs. Hanchilu rechimu shebitfunato mocho v'talamot libo haniskarot le'el.
However, the above-mentioned fear and love that are in the intelligence of the brain and the recesses of the heart.
Right, so there is a fear and love, right? And here is shebitfunato. So even in the translation here, you can miss it, right? The first time I learned the Tanya, I literally missed this whole concept of tfuna, because in the translation, which I was relying on more at that time, it just says intelligence of the brain, right? I mean, how do you get that that's not just, I mean, what is that? Is that chachma? Is that bina? Is that tfuna? Is that dad? Right? The English can't possibly get at the intelligence in the brain means bitfunot mocho, which is that applied kind of emotional intelligence that's still within the brain, but has a sense of appreciation as opposed to just intellectual consideration. So, in that hidden emotion that's within the intellect, right? Gavhu darcheu lemala mala mibchinat hamaseh.
Are of a far higher order than the level of action.
Right, so the heart is already down here with the active limbs. The heart is, such a warm physical organ that drives the whole body, gives it energy, pumps blood to it. It's so connected to everything. It can drive the world of action. It's related to the world of action intimately. The brain is much higher than that. The brain is not directly connected to the world of action. It's sort of take it or leave it in many ways, right? ואי-אפשר להם להתלבש בבחינת מעשה המצוות להיות להם בחינת מוחין וחיות להעלותן לפרחה לאלה.
Therefore, they cannot clothe themselves in the performance of the commandments to become their intellectual power and vitality, to elevate them so that they may soar on high.
Yeah, so in and of themselves, my intellectual consideration, my meditation, should not be able to elevate Torah mitzvahs and redeem the sparks in the world around me and fulfill the whole purpose of my soul, the deepest longing of why soul journeys down to be in a body. And when the soul looks back after life and looks back at the most meaningful points in that life, it's not, I finally got to drive that car. It's, I found that spark, whether it was a piece of food or a person that needed help or a situation that needed my input. And I brought my best self forward and I helped the world around me, elevated it. The soul looks back and sees great, great light and joy in those. Right? That's kind of vision we want to live life with. And intellect can't do that. Intellect can't elevate those moments directly. Intellect will know intellectually what I should do, but it's not going to drive, it's not going to get me there, it's not going to give it the wings in the same way that the heart can. The inability, yeah.
Isn't this part of the Western idea that there's a separation between mind and body? Doesn't it reflect Western philosophy rather than Eastern philosophy, that the mind is just another organ of the body?
So you're saying Eastern philosophy, they look at the mind as just another organ of the body.
Yeah.
Western philosophy tends to compartmentalize them and separate them.
Yeah.
So you're saying, isn't
this a reflection of Western thought?
It's an interesting question. The question is this a reflection of Western thought, which says the mind and body are separate, whereas Eastern thought sees the brain as an organ of the body and mind and body are not separate?
Yeah.
Get your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the key is in the separate versus distinct, right? Separate versus distinct. I don't think that Kabbalah sees mind and body as separate, because we're just one soul and it's just one reality, and in the end it's just one light, right? So There's no separations in the end in anything, right? And certainly in my soul, it's one experience, and the soul and the body are also, they're joined, right? And we don't like to use the word separate necessarily, but I prefer to use the word distinct. And here it is different than either Eastern or I think Western, right? Because it's one soul, and there's a unity in the soul. There's one soul with a unity in the soul, but in Kabbalah, we don't want to just say, well, just one light, right? Just meditate till you're in one light, and mind and body, you'll see, it's just an illusion that they're separate, and you want to erase that illusion and experience reality without that illusion that mind and body are separate. That's kind of the Eastern, very globally, that's kind of Eastern. Kabbalah says the best way to experience the unity of mind and body the best way to experience the unity of mind and body is to masterfully understand the distinction between mind and body, and then recognizing that they are distinct aspects of one being, now fuse them most masterfully, right? So maybe a better way to explain it is, what's the highest level of unity? Is it where everything is uniform, and so it's all one? Or is it where things are quite distinct, and yet there's a oneness between many distinct aspects, right? Like a physical body, for instance, to go simpler, has many, many, many organs that each have their own place and their own function and their own design and their own everything, and yet there's one me. And would I be more one if all my organs decided they wanted to be the same? God forbid, right? We know what that's called. It's called cancer, right? When your cells start to say, I'm the same as every other cell, right? There's no distinction between a liver cell and a brain cell. Well, there is, right? When my organs stay distinct and then work together as distinct organs, in Kabbalah we say that's a higher form of unity than were they to be uniform, which doesn't work at all, in fact. Same thing to get to your question with mind and body. They're distinct, but we don't want to erase even the distinction so that it's just one light. I mean, there may be moments where you get to that, but we diverge from Eastern philosophy in that we want to almost celebrate the distinction between the mind and the body, and then integrate them masterfully in order to elevate the world. Does that answer? I don't think that's Western either. I think it's Kabbalah. I think Kabbalah, Israel's right in the middle of the East and West kind of thing, and Israeli Jewish spirituality is also a bridge between the East and West and has its own characteristics that I think, in my teacher's opinion, also inform East and West. Yeah?
Can it work? Okay, so the heart. Somebody
It's a nice tune, though.
Somebody needs you.
Do you know there's a way to mute those phones typically. Do you know there's a little switch? Oh, that's an older one. Is that no emergency? It's good? Okay, thank God. Yes?
So can the heart, in affecting other organs, can the heart also affect the brain?
Yes, well, the heart lends vitality to the brain too, right? So we
okay.
talk about how the soul comes into the brain first, then flows to the heart, but it's the heart that pumps blood to the brain, and so the heart actually gives the physical brain's vitality, so it's a symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
We get more into that in the later chapters.
Okay.
Good question. So let's go on. The inability of the love.
The inability of the love to find expression beyond the mind, which is far more spiritual than the other organs, indicates that the revelation of the soul present in the Tfuna love has not become materialized enough to affect the other more corporeal organs. As we see, when one's actions are motivated not by the desire of his heart, but solely by his understanding that he ought to act in a particular manner, then his actions lack vitality. So it is true of the Tfuna love and the Tfuna fear. They are so far removed from the organs that they are incapable of lending vitality to the actual performance of the mitzvot and to elevate them thereby.
Right, so this whole Tfuna business, right? I mean, look at it just simply. How can just the mind saying, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, I appreciate that. Or yeah, that I can imagine doing that. Right? How can that really elevate Torah and mitzvahs like an emotion, right? It's not in the heart, it's not revealed, I'm not energized, right? And in and of itself, It really shouldn't, because it is still part of the intellect, which is removed from my physical organs, removed from physical action. Im lo shekadosh baruch hu mitzarfan umechabran livchinat mahamase.
If not for the fact that God joins and unites them together with the action so that they may serve as its wings.
Right, there's it. God joins a good thought with the action. Not considers it done, but joins the thought to the action. That's this dynamic. So if I've sat and meditated in the morning, and I've created at least a tefuna emotion, and now when I go to do some good other-centered thing, I come back and I bring that tefuna emotion to mind, and a little bit, the heart notices it, even if it's not an emotion, and now I do something. Okay, that elevation is actually still spiritually dynamic, and that Torah mitzvahs can elevate, and we'll all see when we're like souls out of a body, that was a beautiful, meaningful piece of the world that we elevated back to its source, that was ours to elevate. It was our little baby to take care of, and when we did, it grew up and it became a full-fledged mitzvah, and it went and found its source again.
Is that like a mikra?
Mikra.
A mikra when, in the Torah, when something happens, seems like coincidence? It's not?
Okay. Yeah, you're right. So me finding the opportunity seems to me like a coincidence.
Yeah.
So is that not like that? Yeah. Every time I come across two people come to me with a fight and they can't resolve it, and they come to me, and I think just chance that they found me, and I'm going to waste 20 minutes, then I'm probably not going to resolve it. It's just the opposite. Everything is divine providence. That's a spark that's come to me. I should recognize it, that now I have the tools to help in some way, and if I do that, and if I bring my tevuna meditation feelings to that situation, now I can not only help the two people in the world, but I can elevate the spark in that situation and create more love between people, right? Which is a mitzvah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, everything's divine providence. Here, we'll just do two more little bits. V'hei nikrot b'shem machashava tova, ki enan dechilu urechimu mamash behitgalut libo.
Then fear and love are called good thought, for they are not actual fear and love in a revealed state in the heart.
Right, so we can't call them emotions. That's why the Talmud calls them a good thought, right? This tefuna thought that's reaching towards being a better person, that's reaching towards doing a good thing, but it's still just a good thought, right? So that is, for many of us, the essence of the long, short way, is we meditate and create and generate tefuna emotions, sometimes full-fledged emotions, but tefuna emotions as well, and we get into the flow of that. And on the one hand, that eventually leads to more and more palpable emotions in the heart. On the other hand, we still really, really get a deep satisfaction and sense of purpose out of elevating the world with those tefuna emotions. And that can be a profound soul pathway in and of itself. But only
in the intelligence of the brain and the recesses of the heart, as mentioned above, since they express themselves in the mind, they are called good thought.
This then
is the illusion contained in the statement. God joins the good thought to the deed. God joins the good thought, the tevuna love and fear, to the good deed that one has actually performed, so that the deed is not separate from the thought, but instead is elevated by it.
Yeah, so we're on 240. Let's finish with a meditation. So we'll pick up at that note when we come back. So I hope these some of these concepts are helpful. And in a way, sometimes it feels like you're, like I said, splitting hairs about states of consciousness. Yeah, we still have 5 more minutes. I want to do this meditation. It feels like we're splitting hairs about states of consciousness, but these different little slices of intellect and emotions, they can become very, very real the more you start to distinguish them. That tevuna is a particular state, and you become more masterful, more emotionally intelligent at taking intellect and not letting it stay just as ideas, but letting it be an idea with a certain emotional impact, and then using that in the world. Right? This is a real human and Jewish zone, and we can really use this to our advantage. Right? And the more and more you kind of think about it, focus on it, engage in it, the more it becomes a real part of your personality, not just some Hebrew word tefuna. So if we find yourself in a comfortable position, whether you're
watching with us here online or whether you're watching at a later date online, just sitting in any position. And if you have any of the metta techniques, perhaps you are working with labels, system meditation, just quickly use the 3 breath technique to bring yourself to a state of meditative composure. Take some deep, relaxed breaths. Perhaps rather than looking intently at your breath as if you were trying to spot a target, just gaze at your breath with a sense of composure as if you're looking at a sunset. And now notice the 4 aspects of the breath we discussed. The in-breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let it hold, 2, 3, 4, and the out-breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let that be still, 2, 3, and in again. Let that stay in, and out. Stay with the out-breath. Go through a few cycles of that breathing. As you're breathing, notice the difference in the temperature and the spot just under your nostrils between the in-breath and the out-breath. In-breath is cooler as you breathe in. The out-breath is warmer coming from your lungs. On this round, open up that gateway, the gateway for wisdom between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath. That opening is our gateway. And in that gateway, we'll place the meditation Si'u marom enechem, based on the word Shema, listen from the Shema. That we should lift our eyes up on high, not seeing with our physical vision, which tells us just physical stuff around me, but seeing from the vision of the soul and the intellect that sees the spiritual sparks that are placed lovingly in our environment at every moment. Can see the letters of the Shema. Let those details fill your mind